You are looking almost live. Mike Fisher reporting from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Of course, this is U.S. Bank Stadium, home of the Minnesota Vikings. That's why it looks like a ship. And we're getting you ready for Cowboys at Vikings. Here's the biggest issue, big picture issue for the Cowboys here. And again, there's a lot of little picture issues, and okay, we'll go through some of those too. As of Friday, Cowboys defensive ends Tank Lawrence and Randy Gregory, both sick. Both illnesses. The Cowboys and Mike McCarthy suggesting that, at least in Randy Gregory's case, that is not COVID related, suggesting that that's the case. We hope that that is indeed the case. But they both pop up on the Friday injury list with illnesses and some concerns there. Obviously, Randy Gregory has been on the verge of very good. He's about that close to making a bunch of plays in games. Maybe that's going to come. In the case of Tank Lawrence, he's a guy that goes hard all the time, even though the big numbers aren't there. He's got just the 3 sacks, of course. As he said this week, I'm not about the sacks, I'm not about the stats, I'm about a Super Bowl. Well, the smart Alex says, well, you don't have any of them right now. Playing at Minnesota would certainly help, and we will monitor the health of those two guys. Joe Looney will be the center. Tyler Biadasz, the rookie, he is unable to go injury-wise. Chido Awuzie, of course, will start at cornerback, as you know that the rookie Diggs has been put on IR. Maybe end up for the rest of the season on IR with the foot. No reason to hustle him back, no reason to push him back. Zach Martin has a little bit of a calf problem, but I watched his practice on Wednesday and Thursday. He did some cord stuff, I believe, on Wednesday, and on Thursday did a lot of cord stuff and then started participating with the first and second teams after that. So Zach Martin, good to go here in Minnesota on Sunday. Another relatively little picture item, Dalvin Cook. And he is physical and electric all at the same time. That's a breakaway threat waiting to happen, but he also runs between the tackles, and he's the NFL's leading rusher. And they've done this in Minnesota, frankly, with all due respect. I hope they don't hear me say this. It's not like they've built an incredible offensive line. They've struggled, really, draft picks and otherwise, to get their offensive line to where they want it. It's certainly nowhere near the Dallas great offensive lines of the last couple of years, and yet there Dalvin is leading the NFL in rushing. And not only a threat to hammer you for 4 yards, but also a threat to sprint 40 yards on you and dart 40 yards on you. Elusive and electric and physical, and a guy that runs between the tackles. And as we know, while the Cowboys are saying, we're not the same team that we were against Cleveland, they're the same guys that they were against Cleveland. And Cleveland, great ground game, tore them up. And this great ground game obviously threatens to tear you up too. The other running back, of course, is Ezekiel Elliott, the featured running back in this game. Our man Jerry Jones was on 105.3 The Fan on Friday morning saying, I still believe that Zeke's our best player. And my guy said, you mean best running back or best player? No, best player. And he should be in the class of best Cowboys. Zach Martin's their best player that's active right now. And in fact, of the active players right now, the non-injured players, not counting Dak, it's not even, and Tyron, it's not even close, right? That Zach Martin is this team's best active player. He still is performing at a high level. Is Ezekiel Elliott performing at a high level? And if the answer is no, and I think the answer statistically is no, doesn't have a 100-yard game yet this year. He, by the way, says he doesn't care about that. Like Tank, he just wants to win games. And I believe him. But is this the decline of Ezekiel Elliott, or is it the problem with the offensive line? Is it the lack of a quarterback who's a threat so defenses can gang up on him? It's certainly true to say that Zeke is not as elusive as he once was. The 30-yard runs just aren't there. And that's not all about offensive play. That could suggest a wear down on the part of Ezekiel Elliott and brings up a question about whether or not Jerry Jones is right about him being their best player. I think once you've signed a contract with a running back or anybody else, he said the same thing about Jalen Smith, says he's still a foundational player. Once you give a guy $14 million a year and you're the guy signing the checks, maybe you feel mentally and emotionally obliged to say, oh, no, he's still great, because the checks keep getting signed. And every Tuesday, the checks keep getting cashed. So maybe you just have to nod your head to what you've done and hope for the best. Ezekiel Elliott, behind a good offensive line, obviously, would still be dangerous. Maybe not dynamic, but dangerous. And this isn't a good offensive line right now that Dallas will bring into this game at Minnesota. Minnesota's got some named defensive players. Some of them have worn down themselves. Harrison Smith, the safety, has a big reputation. I don't know that he's having a big year. There's a bunch of those kind of guys that dot the Vikings roster. And so maybe Zeke can take advantage. Andy Dalton will be the quarterback, and there's no controversy here, and there's no question about it. The only problem Andy has is coming off the COVID thing. He can't taste his food, and he can't smell his food, which, as he pointed out, is a really good advantage if you're trying to gain weight because, you know, the taste and the smell, that's one of the best parts about lasagna. But if you can't taste it and can't smell it, you might as well just have, I don't know, celery sticks. And so Andy Dalton has been able to easily watch his weight as he gets ready to come back and be the starting quarterback for the Cowboys at the Vikings. He'll have his entire group of receiving core at his disposal, of course, and then maybe he'll be able to give a little spark to an offense that has really struggled. This is a two-way street for Dallas's problems. Cowboys give up 32 points a game defensively. That's preposterous. And you're like, who in the world else could be as that bad? Well, Minnesota gives up 29 points a game. So while Minnesota at 4-5 is starting to turn things around, much more than Dallas has at 2-7, there are still problems in Minnesota, even with their better record. So now to the big picture issue. And yeah, it's getting a little cold out here. It's getting a little cold. Where's my jacket? Where's my scarf? The Cowboys in the Jerry Jones plus era don't lose out of the first 10 games, 8 of them very often. In fact, it happens once every 20 years. It happened in 1988. That's before Jerry got here. That's the final year of the Tom Landry era. And that roster in 1988, as you old-timers recall, they had players on that roster. They had big names on that roster. Everson Walls and Nate Newton and Michael Irvin and on and on and on, right? Am I remembering right? But they started 2-8, and they had the great coach Tom Landry. What they didn't have was a healthy quarterback. Danny White wasn't healthy that year, and so Steve Pellure played some quarterback, and Clint Sterner played some quarterback. And I remember having Emmitt Smith on, who was on that team, of course. Emmitt Smith, no, wait a minute, was he? Yeah, I don't know, I can't remember. And I asked Emmitt Smith about his thoughts on Clint Sterner, and he said, oh yeah, I got great confidence. Maybe this was the next year. Great confidence in Clint Sternum, he said. And when I realized that Emmitt Smith didn't even know, oh no, wait a minute, I'm confusing my era. Clint Sternum was 2001, I'll get there in a minute. This was Steve Pellure, somebody else, a blonde kid from California, and they couldn't play. And the team started 2-8 because of it. Now, 20 years later almost, we get to 2001. Almost 20 years later, and I'm cutting it off a little bit. I'm cheating a little bit. An era later, for sure. And now, Clint Sternum is one of the quarterbacks, along with Quincy Carter and Ryan Leaf was there that year, and was Anthony Wright there that year? And yeah, that was the year I said to Emmett, oh, so you got Clint Sterner starting at quarterback this week. What do you think of him? Oh, I like Clint. I know him really well. He's really got something for us. Clint Sternum is going to be okay for us on Sunday, and that's when I realized the Cowboys were probably going to keep going 2-8 that year, and indeed they did. So 2-8, doesn't happen very often. Along comes another Cowboy team about 20 years later, right? This time I've got my math right, and guess what? They don't have a quarterback. And not relative to Dak Prescott. This is not an argument to pay Dak Prescott $40 million. That's an argument for another day. This is a Cowboy Viking day, and this is an Andy Dalton day. But the moral to the story of the Cowboys every 12 or 15 or 20 years and how rarely they go 2-8 is in the last 31 years, it's only happened twice, and they are on the verge of it happening again. The Vikings are a 7.5-point favorite. There's no reason to think that the Cowboys are going to have success here. If they do, I'm sure you'll be delighted, unless you are tankerific, in which case you want the Cowboys to lose valiantly, and you keep an eye on Washington, Philadelphia, and New York, and go ahead and hope they win. I appreciate you subscribing here. We have traveled to Minnesota. I'd like to say we've traveled for you, because you subscribe to the Fish Sports YouTube channel, but actually I'm very selfish. I'm here for myself as well. But we're glad to have you along for the ride. So thank you for subscribing. Please spread the word and tell Cowboys Nation, your friends in Cowboy Nation, that yeah, we're with the Cowboys. home and road at the Star and in the big purple ship in Minnesota. Fish out.